Welcome to the Branding Laboratory, where we explore the art and science of branding. I'm your host, Deevo Tindall, brand strategist, storyteller, and master photographer. Join us as we dive deep into the captivating stories, expert insights, and practical tips to help you elevate your brand and connect deeply with your audience. Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Deevo, and I'm excited to kick off today's episode with my boy, Jon Rollman. He is the CEO of Products Design. They are a engineering software company that helps companies grow, scale, and offer a diverse set of deliverables for product offerings and impactful innovations by providing guidance, discovery, prioritization, product development, and go to market, which I just read straight from your website. So I need to break that down. What exactly is Products Design, and what do you do, Johnny? Welcome to the show, by the way.
Thanks, Deevo. Good to see you, man.
Yeah.
Yes, so consulting agency that focuses on high growth software companies. And what we specialize in is everything from the very beginning of the software development lifecycle with the discovery and research on uncovering the unmet market needs, the user pain, trying to figure out what those problems are, and then working through the whole prioritization of all those things we need to get done and built out. And then from the go to market side, working with the product marketing team and the marketing team for sales enablement and making sure that launch goes smoothly.
So let me break that down so that I can understand in layman terms. So your background is software engineering, product development. You are now a consultant based upon and we're going to talk about your origin story, but you are a consultant for software development companies, and you help them from sort of an outside perspective, taking a look at the development from cradle to grave, the development of the software and all the implications and all the different design pieces that go into that, and then eventually how to take that once they've created it and get it to market.
Yes, very similar. So if you think of, are you familiar with the term 0 to 1?
I am.
Yeah. Development. So, so that zero piece of it, so the ideation stage of, hey, we have this concept, this idea of what we think we should go build. Mm-hmm. Really, the first part of that is getting a good understanding of, does this idea actually hold water? Does it have legs? And that requires research and discovery. And so from that research and discovery standpoint, you really need to go deep and get an understanding of, how is this idea going to solve a problem? And what problem does it solve? And what are the things we need to do to make sure that we build this feature out or the software out to actually go solve that problem and do it really well? So that first piece of the discovery is really, really critical to the success of a feature or to a new piece of software, because if you don't do that well and don't go deep enough, then you're really kind of scratching the surface and basing a lot of your concepts and how this thing is actually going to be built out and what it really is off of a lot of assumptions. And when it's based off a lot of assumptions, obviously, you know what that means. You're not backing it with data. And then when it goes to market and people go, hey, why is this thing falling flat? Well, it kind of goes back to the very beginning of it, where you're doing a lot of this building and requirements discovery off of assumptions and not real data.
Yeah, totally understood. You're speaking my jam, because that's actually in my world. While I'm not a software engineer, we actually do the exact same thing with our clients, which is one of the things that we found early on, especially with entrepreneurs, is they went to market too early and they hadn't established the blueprint, the foundation of what their business does, what problems they solve, as you just stated, and how they're going to clarify that message so they can communicate directly with their ideal customers. So you're speaking my jam. It's really important, and I can't stress this enough, and it sounds like you're saying the same thing, that whether you're a new business and you're launching into the entrepreneurial world or you're trying to scale a product, it's very, very important that you don't have a business plan. It's that you have a foundation built first and foremost, right? And understand the nuances and the subtleties of your product or your service or whatever it is, and the problem that you're solving for your customers, so that you can then market that secondarily, correct? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think from just to be clear, I don't have a software development background. I'm in software product management, which is, my right hand over the years has been software development. So working with developers and having that really keen partnership with them. But from the discovery side of things, if if you really don't have a good understanding of what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and then understanding how you're going to go solve that in a good way, and a lot of that requires a lot of conversations with people outside of your building.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have those, then the requirements that are going to be written from the product team or from the product person are going to be, again, kind of going back off this, based off of assumptions. And then your value proposition from the go-to-market team is going to be based off those assumptions as well.
Yeah.
So it's really critical to get that part right.
Yeah. It's the most critical piece, in my opinion, to be honest with you.
I agree.
If you don't clarify that piece, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but if you don't have that piece clarified up front and you're solving, and it's not to say that you only solve one problem, but I always advise people, especially if you're new in the process, is pick out what's the core problem you're solving here, even if it's just discovery, or even if it's just finding what your sweet spot is or your niche. There's no reason why you can't elaborate on different pieces of your business in the solutions that you offer. But early on, it's very clear that you have some clarity and crystallization on that key problem that you solve. And then once you start to grow and scale and sort of sort out the kinks, if you will, then you can expand on that. Let's switch gears. I want to talk a little bit about, you said you're not a software developer. You're more of a consulting engineer, sort of a maestro is how I see it. Tell me a little bit about your origin story. How did you get into the space? And just for the record, I've known Johnny Rolls for the better half of 20 plus years now. We used to play soccer together in San Diego, which is bizarre to me. I didn't even know you moved to the Carolinas. I don't even know how I found it. I think it was on LinkedIn or something one day. I was just bouncing around and LinkedIn was like, dude, you should probably connect with Johnny Rolls. I was like, wait, Johnny Rolls is in Raleigh, North Carolina. So anyhow, just it's amazing to me. And I'm going somewhere with this. It's amazing to me the different types of connections that throughout my career, both personal and professionally, that I have made with people, and how important it is to nurture relationships and not be a dick, and where those potentially can lead you in a whole variety of different ways. So I'm grateful for the fact that I've known you for this long. It's really been kind of fun for the last few years since we've reconnected here in the Carolinas to sort of watch this unfolding in this new space that you're stepping into as an entrepreneur. So, congratulations for stepping into the entrepreneurial Swiss Army knife world. Welcome to the club, my friend. Now, question, tell me a little bit about your origin story and how you got into the space of where you are today, if you may.
Yeah, this is going to be a funny one, because I got into product management purely by accident. So this is kind of a wild story. I was working for a marketing company, entertainment marketing company, that part of the business, actually a big part of the business, was the owner of the company was the manager of a Puerto Rican psychic and astrologer named Walter Mercado. And this guy is probably one of the most famous, like, Latino Spanish speaking astrologers in the world. He has now passed away, but back in the
That
day,
that's a
he was
really crystal niche, isn't it?
yeah. So back in the day, he was on Univision, which is a Spanish speaking
Mhm.
television station, every day for 5 minutes, and he would give his horoscopes for the day for everyone, all the viewers. So as part of that business, with this company, was they had, I'm not sure if you remember, like the 900 business, the 900 numbers.
Mhm.
And so, like, they would call in, it was branded with Walter Mercado. People would call in and get their psychic reading.
Mhm.
Well, there was some fraud that happened with, I guess, a competitor. The FTC came in and shut down the whole 900 business, which effectively kind of pretty much killed the main revenue stream for this entertainment marketing company that I work for. So, long story short, the owner said to me, "Listen, we need to find something quick, and we need to be online. So let's go do some research." So basically, I was kind of tasked with going out and doing some research. And so I spent a few weeks, had a bunch of conversations, did a bunch of research, came up with a proposal. Basically, came back and said, "We need to be online. Here's kind of what it looks like. Uh, picture picture like a dating website, but instead of a dating website, you have all the profiles of, like, psychics in a call center." The whole click to call technology had just come out. I contacted one of the providers that did that, got the licensing for it, and was like, instead of being charged like by the minute for 900, they can pay with their credit card online. So we can do a payment processing online. And so the owner was like, "I love the idea. Let's go build it." And I was kind of like, "Okay." He's like, "No, like, I'm funding this. Go build it." And so, like, okay, I don't even know what I'm doing, but sure. And so we contracted with a development group out of Argentina. And I flew down there and spent about 3.5 weeks on site with their engineering team and kind of got all the requirements built out and established, and then worked with them on doing the initial software development. And we wound up launching the website, and it was actually pretty successful right out of the gate. So we wound up building a second one, that was kind of more white label. And unfortunately, it's kind of one of the situations where when there's disposable income, that whole business is very profitable.
Mm.
When the economy turns sour, people are like, hey, I don't have any more disposable income, so that kind of dries up. So that happened when the financial crisis hit and the economic downturn in 2008. So I wound up kind of leaving at that time because the company was struggling a little bit. And so when I left, I'm looking at kind of marketing manager jobs at the time because before then I was doing marketing. And I'm like, what have I been doing for the past almost 4 years? So I started looking at product manager jobs, and I was like, huh, I did that, I did that, I did that, I did that. And so uh, I started applying for product manager jobs, and I wound up starting with a local startup here in Raleigh, North Carolina, called MedFusion, and which was eventually acquired by Intuit. And so that kind of started my whole path with
Mm.
product management in kind of its true form. So uh, thankfully, I think from that first experience of getting into it, it being a product manager without even really knowing I was a product manager was one that kind of also helped shape me in a way of
Mm-hmm.
like I didn't have any preconceived notions of what I was supposed to be doing. I was just doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I was working for the startup and they got acquired by Intuit, they brought in their whole kind of like product leadership team and really put us through a bunch of training. And that's where I was like, oh wow, this is actually really cool stuff. So that's how I got started.
So I love stories. Thank you for sharing that with us. So you're now no longer part of that sphere of the corporation. You have decided to start this new business on your own. If I may, just in a few words, what was the impetus for you deciding to go out on your own as an entrepreneur?
Two things really. The first was I was working for a accounting software company and got laid off last May, so a little over a year ago, and that was my third layoff over my work career, and just kind of getting tired of like, okay, here we go. It's like starting all over again. And what's been interesting is like with each layoff, I've always landed in a better spot. So thankfully, I've been in a position where it's been good actually in the end. But for this one, I want to get laid off. Shortly thereafter, I had a friend of mine who's a CEO of a local company reach out to me and say, "Hey, we think we could use some help." And so I had just an initial gig kind of fall in my lap pretty much right out of the gate. And as I and I had several months of severance under my belt, so I was like, I got some runway here. I'll take this kind of initial gig just to really kind of get some gravy money in and keep busy while I'm hanging out with my family because I was going to take some time off and hang out with my kids and my wife. And so when I guess August rolls around of last year, and I was like, I should probably start looking for a new job now. And I started looking for roles, and I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do this. Exactly, like kind of going back and like doing because at the time I was in a product leadership role,
Mhm.
managing a team, and so I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do that anymore. What do I want to do? And so I quickly realized like I still love product. I still love the whole process of it. The just in general, I'm a product person kind of through and through. So and I realized I was like, hey, actually, this consulting stuff, and I was only working about 10 or 15 hours a week. I was like, I'm actually really enjoying this. It's kind of
Mhm.
going back to basics. And um, I'm a soccer coach. And so it's, and it's when I manage teams, I love coaching my team. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of going back to that, but almost like at like an individual company level. So going back to basics and coaching them on like, hey, like what do you have in process right now? What things are you missing? What are your challenges? And so that's where I really was like, I really enjoy this. So at that point, had a conversation with my wife, and I had lots of conversations. And actually, Viva, you were probably remember you were one of them going back in the day. I was saying, I'm not sure if should be something I follow, and it was wholeheartedly yes, you should. So I made the jump, and here I am today.
I love the fact that you were able to make a pivot and not just sort of Let me back up. Make a pivot and being self-aware of what it is you truly wanted. A lot of people are aware of what they truly want and realize that they're not living their dream job, or realize that they're not doing the things that they're intended or meant to be doing, whatever that means. And that's different to different people. But most people just sort of, a large number of people just sort of like, I'm not willing to put in the effort because it takes a lot of work to start a business, man. Like, right? It takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to sort of get into that space and make it work. And not a lot of people have the moxie or the fortitude to do that. So kudos to you. You mentioned something that really resonated with me. You talked about how you're a soccer coach and you're leading teams and developing people. There's a thought that I saw recently, that we should be more focused on our trajectory than our current results. And I started reflecting on that sort of, and it really resonated with me. Could you share from your perspective a personal story or a moment in this pathway in the last 3 years that you have recognized that significantly has influenced this new career trajectory that you're taking on?
What do you mean with the?
So let me rephrase that. So when I look at where I am with my business, and I've launched a few businesses now, I'm on my fourth business now. And I look at the trajectory of where my life has gone from in 2010 when I left the corporate world and where I am today, 14 years later. And I sort of see like a common theme in a lot of those directions that I've taken, and they all sort of center around personal freedom for me, being able to have autonomy and freedom of choice and spending more time with my children and doing the things that I love most that I am able to do because of my entrepreneurial quest that I've went on that I didn't have the freedoms to do working for the corporate world. So when you look at your trajectory in the last 3 years, switching from the corporate world to this entrepreneurial world, is there any specific thing that you sort of that jumps out at you that you and your wife talk about at night and be like, you know what, there was that one moment that was sort of like I had this epiphany and that's really kind of pushed me into this space?
Yeah, so thank you for clarifying that. So I will actually expand the timeline to go back probably 20 years and not
Mm,
three.
mm.
And I think from that trajectory is I have always been entrepreneurial. Going back to when, I mean, I was a 12-year-old and going around and trying to mow lawns and
Same.
shovel snow and that kind of thing. And so, um, but for me, in kind of getting into product and software and realizing like I love product and software is really cool. I always had this kind of guttural feeling. I was like, I'm gonna start my own software startup company. And I have honestly like struggled with that over the years because I've come up with a whole bunch of ideas and kind of just my nerdy product self. Like I'll do some research and I'll look into things and I'm like, oh, that's kind of okay, but like it's not really it's not going to be a good market fit kind of thing, or it's not going to go anywhere. And so for me, it's been almost like a push to get into to be an entrepreneur, but also one where I feel like it's kind of held me back a little bit.
Mm.
Um, and so, what was that impetus that got me to actually do it? So, like I said, I got laid off. I kind of went into it, and what the interesting thing was is that I was probably 6 weeks after I had actually started my company. You know, I got the LLC together and a business bank account, and you did all the spiel. Um, that it was that 6 weeks later where I was like, wait a second, I'm an entrepreneur. Holy crap! I was like, wow, I didn't even like realize it at the time until 6 weeks later. That I was like, I just started my own company, and like now I'm running this whole thing. Wow, like I had in my head this whole time I'm going to do a software startup company, and it's just like so that trajectory was like not exactly where I was headed. It kind of like went off in a little bit of a different direction, but at the same point, it still landed me in a situation where like now I'm an entrepreneur, and so
Yeah.
it's totally cool.
It's a squiggly line, isn't it?
Yeah,
That trajectory is very squiggly. I think early on I got stuck in the idea that our trajectory was a straight line, a straight and narrow line. Go to college, get your degree, get a job, 2.5 weeks vacation, spend one of them at Disney World, have some kids, get a house, buy a white picket fence, put 2.5 dogs and a cat, and just sort of like go that route. I never knew that entrepreneurialism was a route that I could even just to be frank with you, I look back at my childhood and my parents never had any types of these conversations with me. It wasn't something like, "Hey, you have these big dreams, these big juicy, audacious dreams, go out and do that. It was just sort of like go to college and do the thing that I said, the straight and the narrow. And I saw these people doing different things. Certainly, I was aware of that, but I never put two and two together that they had sort of taken a different route than everyone else had taken. And so looking back on that and kind of jumping into that space is sort of like, dude, how did nobody ever have that conversation with me that I didn't necessarily even have to go to college? I didn't have to do all those things. I could have, because I had a bunch of really cool ideas as a youngster. Like I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, I wanted to travel, and I didn't do any of those things. I just got stuck in this pattern, this straight linear line. So I'm always just fascinated. I started this podcast because I'm just fascinated by people's stories and how they got to where they are and what they define as successful and one of the things that they're doing to innovate and make a difference on the world. So anyhow, I'm going off on my rabbit hole there, but just thank you for sharing that piece. You're now a leader of a company, and I think you're still a solopreneur, or maybe you have a team, but regardless, you're still leading something, even if it's just yourself. How do you define leadership? What does it mean to you personally and within your organization?
Well, it's interesting for me now because I am a solopreneur, but I think my ongoing over the years is when I became a manager, and realizing how hard it is to be a manager and what it entails is not just like, hey, kind of working with people, but really getting a good understanding of people's work habits, what they're good at, what they're not good at, helping them coach on that perspective. And but also it's really hard because what I guess people don't tell you when you become a manager is that you get in the thick of things with your direct reports. You understand their personal problems. You get kind of looped in on things. Sometimes you have one who's not pulling their weight, and you need to put them through a performance review process, and it's hard. And I think companies out there do a pretty big disservice to their kind of early managers, by not putting them through that process
Mm.
of really teaching them. And so, as part of that too, that then goes into leadership, right?
Mhm.
So for me, a leader is someone who brings people along and helps build them to the point where they are self sufficient and they're actually better than probably their manager, at the job. And so, if you can be someone who has that capability and that skill set to work with a team or with a person to set them up for success, that to me is a leader. And I think it's not just in the workplace. So I mean, like I told you, I'm a soccer coach, and um, I think as part of being a leader is all about continuous learning. So just a little side note. So I'm actually going to get my first level of actual coaching licensing, in a couple weeks. And so like I don't really have any plans to do anything much beyond like probably coaching kids soccer. Um, but the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm a big continuous learner.
Yeah.
And also if even if I'm coaching 12 and 13-year olds, like I want to do a good job at it. And so I want to help them improve so they can be a better soccer player. So it kind of goes along the same lines with like anything. So I want to be able to help a person, or kind of where I'm at with my business is I want to be able to help a company overcome a problem that they're currently having in order to improve and grow.
I love that take on it. There was a quote, I forget which president it was. I want to say Ronald Reagan. I'm just showing my age, by the way, by that quote. And he said, the greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He's the one who gets the people to do the greatest things. And I always love that idea of leadership because I think, are you there? Or are you frozen? Joni, I think I lost you for a second. Damn it. Tell me you're here, baby. Tell me you're here. I'm going to pause it. Let me pause this recording and get it back going. No, recording should be on. Is recording on?
It was.
It's on now, right?
No, it just stopped.
No, it says recording. Resume recording. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool.
That was
I think it was Ronald Reagan is what I was saying. There was a quote, I just aged myself, by the way. But he said the greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things per se. It's the one who gets the people to do the greatest things. And I always loved that quote because it made me sort of re-engineer what I thought of leadership. You always sort of see like the leader always in today's popular culture, the leader is the one who sort of gets all the fame, whether you're a quarterback or you're the CEO. But ultimately, making yourself the least important person, whether it's in your business or the least important person in your circle, like whatever that is. To me, that's what a great leader is, because you're making all the other people, like you just said, around you greater than you are, and letting them sort of have that role. So I appreciate what you just said. It's interesting to me. I just wanted to go back. I saw a stat. I think it was in Business Week or Harvard, somewhere other. Did you know that 20% of entrepreneurs in today's culture, and just going back, I think it's 50 years was the study, 20% of today's entrepreneurs were laid off from their corporate gig and they decided to move into this space of entrepreneurialism? It's a large number of people, man.
I That doesn't surprise me at all, especially since, like, I mean, I'm new to the space, and I had a lot of conversations with people who jumped into consulting after that, and not even just consulting, but started their own business. And a lot of it was because, you know what, here's my situation, and I'm not going to continue to do this. I'm going to do
Mhm.
something else, and there's things I've wanted to do in my life, and now I'm going to go do them. So, good on them.
Good for you. Let's switch gears to one of my favorite topics, which centers around branding and marketing, and sort of letting people know what your business does and that you're out there and that you exist. How have you been able to crystallize what your brand's core message is? So, as a leader of your company, as a CEO, how have you helped crystallize what this is, so that when people see your website or see your social media or hear you on this podcast, they're really crystal clear on exactly what you do and the problem you solve? What was your process in getting to that space?
It was messy. A lot of trial and error. And I mean, I still don't think it's not perfect, and not even close to being perfect. But I think if it first started out is you have to try, just put it out there, do your first draft, um, run it by people. And going back, you'll probably remember I ran it by you last September, October, something like that. And you kind of tore it apart, which is great. You should have. And you talk through that piece. So I think part of it is just do some personal reflecting on, like, okay, what do I do? What am I good at? How do I help solve problems for kind of like my ideal client? And I guess to that point right there, the ideal client. So, like, really have a good understanding of who is the person you can actually help. Who is the one, that client that you can go after and say, hey, I really understand your problems. I know where you're at. I can help you. So getting a kind of crystal clear on that part of it. But then on the, I guess, the branding and messaging side of just starting off to be clear on like what is my value proposition? How do I go out and help? And what do I do? How do I solve these things? And putting it out there and see what resonates, and getting feedback from people. And what I've found, I think, through this process here is that, which has been a really pleasant surprise, is that people are, in general, like by far in general, really willing to help. All you have to do is ask.
Mm.
And I think for me, that was a big eye opener, where in being a new entrepreneur, like kind of being terrified of, like I'm kind of being out there, like floating off my own, like alone in the ocean, and not knowing what to do. And when you actually talk to people and say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? People are willing to step up and help. And so I think, going back to the branding and messaging, is it's a continual work in progress. I think I've gotten it pretty good for right now. And as I bring on more clients and I get more experience and I start growing the business more and more, it's probably going to have to change. And I need to be, I think, have that awareness that there's going to be change coming with it, but also have that drive to be able to say, like, okay, yeah, now I might be pivoting and taking on a different type of client or something like that. And so now my message has to change a little bit, because
Mhm.
I'm serving a different type of clientele than I was before. So um, it's an evolution, man.
Well said. Well said. And by the way, I wasn't asking that question for the plug, but thank you. I appreciate that. Um, it's interesting to me that we sort of get into this fixed position a lot of times, especially as entrepreneurs, because we've built this product, and a lot of times we build the product because it comes from our lens. It's like something that we're passionate about, or something that we've discovered, or something that helped us. And so we think that because it helped us, it can help everyone else. And that may or may not be true. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. One of the things that I learned early on, speaking of iterations, and it is an iteration, dude, well said. It's a fucking iteration all the time and making sure that you have your finger on the pulse of what your business is doing and how it is evolving and understanding what impact you're making. And you always have to be analyzing that. But one of the things I learned early on about myself as an entrepreneur is that I was sort of narrow sighted in the fact that I'm going to use my photography business that I started a long time ago. I love doing is a very specific type of photography. And I thought like, okay, I'm just going to like do this kind of photography. And then I was like, oh, wait, I also want to do this. And I also want to do that. And I was like, I started taking all these different types of gigs and I wasn't really honing in on what my core strengths were. And I wasn't really clearly understanding, most importantly, what were, and this wasn't necessarily for my audience in photography, but it's like, what does your problem solve for the frustrations for the people that need your product, right? Instead of seeing like my product is this and I'm really good at that and I love doing this, which is important, but if you're not looking at what are the frustrations and needs that your ideal client wants and you're only looking at it from your narrow point of view, then you're not going to be able to address those solutions. So I really appreciate what you just said there on a couple of different things. In terms of understanding who your client is and sort of niching down into that, what was your process in that space, and how have you managed to sort of kind of, you said it's an iterative process, but in the months that you've been doing this, what are some of the iterations that you've made to sort of refine what the product offering is and who you're delivering it to?
I think I'm pretty lucky in a way that because I really had a good understanding of when you say like niching down what that looks like, and it all comes kind of back to my I think my work experience. So I've worked with multiple startups. I've also worked for some medium sized companies, and I've worked for like huge corporate behemoths. Um, and for me personally, like I love the kind of high growth software space. And it's super exciting. It's exhilarating. Like you're walking around with your hair on fire, so to speak. And it's just it's energizing, but it's hard, and there's a lot of things you have to figure out kind of along the way. And so for me, in niching down, like um, it really wasn't all that difficult because I knew that I liked the health space to begin with.
Mm,
And the second part of that is I've been in that seat so many times. I understand the problems. I know what the pain is, and I have felt that pain intensely on, hey, like, what's our product direction look like? How do we prioritize all these things? Like, I don't have time to do a lot of research. Like, how am I supposed to fit all this in? Like, I've been there, and so I understand the challenges and pain points of someone sitting in that seat. So for me, it was pretty clear that hey, I wanted to work with this type of client who I know what their problems are for the most part, and having that conversation of like, man, I totally get you right
mm.
now because I've been in your seat before, and I understand what you're going through, and I have some things that I think would be able to help you. So I guess going back to your question, for me, niching down was a pretty simple path.
Mm. What is your ultimate company's mission? Like, tell me a little bit about that in a few words.
My my mission is really to help these software companies continue their growth, get product market fit, which is a bit of a loaded term these days, but really it means to get to the point where their customers are happily buying their software for them and not even thinking about paying money for it.
Mm,
And to that end, it kind of goes back to that success has a cost to it. And that
mm,
cost is where there's too many priorities, too little focus on certain areas, and it's easily derailed, especially in a very competitive software environment. So my vision is to help kind of smooth that process out and come in as a kind of neutral third party who can kind of see the forest through the trees and be like, hey, let me help you with understanding what your research is. Let me understanding what your priorities are. Let's talk through these challenges of making sure you can get to a go to market position that's going to lead to a successful product launch. And then you can kind of nurture this product and watch it grow. Because starting any business is hard, but having a software startup where you're trying to get a product out the door and make it successful that via a process and people that are very expensive. Software development in general is just very expensive. So I mean, people who can bootstrap a software company, like amazing kudos to you, because it's really hard because software is expensive. So
Yeah.
how can you get to that 0 to 1 and kind of the most efficient path, especially when you're running into situations where as you're getting to be successful a little bit and you get your name out there and people are buying your software, the challenges that come in are kind of unexpected. And so it's to help people get through the stage of it to deliver that value.
And who is your client? We talked about niching in a previous question. Who is your client? If you have a magic wand and I could say, are you frozen? Are you still with me?
That you're
Um, we talked a few minutes ago about, niching down and understanding who your client is and what frustrations you're solving for that client. If you have a magic wand, who is your ideal client in a perfect world?
My ideal client is a high growth software company.
Any
One
industry? Any industry?
for the most part, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And but they're in that spot. And it's, I mean, if you want to take a look at some of the, like from a revenue perspective, it might be 2 to 20 million in revenue. They typically have a small product team. It might be a co-founder. It might be they have one product person, maybe two. Um, but they're growing quite rapidly. They have either gotten to product market fit and just gotten there, or they're pretty close. And so they're seeing these signals, and now like they're really pressing on the gas pedal to make sure they can get some software going. Now,
Mm.
what happens in this situation, and this is why for me it's an ideal client, is the product team or the product person is now getting inundated with feature requests from all sorts. From now they have a sales team, so the salespeople are like, "Hey, we're talking to prospects. Like, we need you guys to go build this so we can sell more." Uh, the research team, if there's a researcher, is saying, "Hey, we did some research and now we need this kind of feature, or we need this software." The support team is hearing these things from support tickets. Basically, they're getting it from all angles, and it's really hard to suss throughout. That it's kind of you get your product backlog, right? And so like, what are these 200 things now that I have my product backlog? What should we go build next? And it's really hard, and it's frankly overwhelming to be like, how do we figure out what to do next? And so that's from my perspective where I want to be able to come in and step in and help.
Mm.
I have several different ways of kind of going through a process to help with that, but the company itself, right, is in a situation where they're in a transition phase of really they're like on the cusp of like we're going to crush this thing right now, and so without having some help on that, it's pretty easy to get kind of sidetracked and like, oh, like, hey, there's a shiny object over here. Let's go down this path. And all of a sudden, like what you thought was a good trajectory, you're going somewhere different.
Mhm. On our last parts of the call, and we're almost getting to the end here, I wanted to learn a little bit about Johnny Rolls, the man, and some of your values and philosophies. What are some of your personal values and philosophies about life and business in general?
Personal philosophies and values. I think one is, I think the first one is just be a good human.
Mm.
um, you said at the beginning of the call, like, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, are you still there? I think you
Yeah, I'm
froze again.
here. Yeah, I'm back. I'm
Okay.
here.
Uh, so yeah, it's being a good human and paying attention to people and what and try to empathize with them and what they're going through and not being so critical and just kind of assuming the worst. It's actually the opposite of that, kind of assuming the best, and giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because I think what I've learned so far, and I mentioned this before, is that I've just been really surprised at how helpful people are and just be willing to help. And even it's just saying, like, hey, I'm frustrated because my pipeline is not as full as I want to be. And if you're like, yeah, I get it. I've been there. I've been in your shoes before, and just keep going, just keep pushing forward. And so it's like, it's a little bit of accountability. It's a little bit of uh, almost being your kind of mentor and coach, even without trying to be, but just kind of pushing you along. So for me, it's again going back to being a good human and kind of focusing on what's really important to be that good human, right? And it's kind of your own personal way of doing things that is going to make, I guess, be helpful to other people.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess pretty much all I have that.
Fair enough. That's a good value to have and a good philosophy. I think assuming the best in people is a good approach because we often hear that our outward manifestations are just a reflection of our inner engineering, right? And so if we're going into a situation, whether we're meeting a new person or it's a new potential client or a collaboration, and we're automatically mistrustful or assuming the worst about people, then that's just going to reflect upon how they perceive us. So I love that approach. If you had, and this is my second to last question, if you had any one thing that you want to be remembered for, let's call it a legacy. I know a lot of people don't like the word legacy, but if you had any one thing that you could be remembered for, what is, and you would like to leave behind, what is that?
I wouldn't want to leave behind like I don't think um, like anything tangible. Like I wouldn't like, oh, I created this whole empire and it's no, my legacy is this huge empire. Like that to me, I don't really care. I think what I would want to be remembered for is someone to say, you know what, he was a good dude, and I enjoyed being around him, and he was caring and thoughtful, and just a good person. And for me, like that's kind of the name of the game.
Hmm. All right, man. I think it's been a good conversation. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.